Kenneth Arnold, who was one of the first people who actually coined the phrase UFOs, or flying saucers, I should say, that he saw 9 craft flying over Rainier, Washington back in 1947. He was flying a plane over Mount Rainier, Washington, and saw these 9 craft and said that they looked like they were saucers skipping on a pond. So that's where we got the term flying saucers. And after he saw those 9 craft, he wrote in his memoir that he was having poltergeist activity and all sorts of bizarre things happening in his home. And even his daughter, who's done multiple interviews, has said that there was all sorts of bizarre things going on in the household after that incident. This is Chad Riley, and you're watching End Times Production. If you come in direct contact, and it's not just things like that, it's even people who suffer from sleep paralysis and things like that as well. So, or even close encounters, it's all connected. And the fact that this hitchhiker phenomenon, that it spreads like a virus, so it spreads throughout your family and your friends and co-workers, and it could spread out into the neighborhood. Even the FBI document 6751, if you read that document, it says that the entities are not from another planet, but from another plane or another reality or another dimension, is the way that it's worded in those documents, or that document in particular. And it says that they are not normal size like us. It says they are much larger. A lot of these people that have gone out to Skinwalker Ranch or some of these other things that we've discussed, when they are seeing these shadow people in their homes, some of them say that they are anywhere between 8 to 10 feet tall. And it doesn't just stop right there either. Even at S2, which is an Air Force base, and at S2, George Knapp has talked about they have seen shadow people out at these military bases, and that they are roaming and running around. Guards have encountered them and pulled guns on them. Well, if you listen very carefully to what the Navajo and the people are saying out there, especially the indigenous people, they talk about these things like they're more demonic entity. And this is coming from them. In fact, do you know much about the Great Witch Purge of 1878? That was not too long after they had been resettled, and they thought that part of the reason why they had been kicked off the land had something to do with witches. And so when they dug up a body of one of the Indians that had been buried, they found a copy of the treaty in that Indian's stomach, and they believed that it had something to do with witches. So they killed several members of their tribe, thinking that was the Great Witch Purge of 1878. They believe that the witches, they commit these murders. They either commit a murder of somebody who is very close to them, or somebody who's very near and dear to them, and that by doing so, it opens them up and gives them this power to shapeshift. But again, when you really look into this stuff, these things are coming from another dimension or another realm. Because out there at Skinwalker Ranch, they have seen these things, literally windows, portals opening up out there, and that they exit these portals, these windows, and they roam around. In fact, they had one that came out of a portal, ran across a field, another portal opened up, and it went through that portal and disappeared.
Is it another dimension? Like when you go through the door, is it another plane of existence?
They've even ran into the predator creature out there, not on one occasion, but at multiple occasions out there at Skinwalker Ranch. Back when Terry Sherman owned the ranch, they ran into the predator creature. A gentleman that had heard some of the news events about what was going on out there when they first started talking about it, before Bigelow even showed up and bought the ranch. Somebody had drove out there and wanted to know if he could go out onto the property and pray or meditate. So he's sitting out there praying and meditating, and next thing they know, they keep hearing a cowbell, but none of Terry's cows had any cowbells on them. So all of a sudden he saw something like a blur running from the tree line towards this individual who's sitting out there in the middle of this pasture. And whatever it was, he said it was humongous. He said it ran up and stood right over him, and said it was louder than a bear and a lion. And it let out this humongous roar, and the guy actually jumped 6 feet back from a sitting position. And he was so petrified he would not let go of them after they ran over and helped him back up. Finally, Terry had to tell him, he said, if you don't let go of me, I'm going to hit you. And he told him, he said, I'll let go of you, but you got to get me off this property. And he said, this property is cursed. He said, you're dealing with the devil.
You ever dance with the devil by the pale moonlight?
This has been going on for a very long time, because Franciscan monks who have been out there since 1776 have reported seeing 3 fireballs flying around in the sky out there. So this has been going on for a very long time. The Indians have known it even longer than that. And like I said, most of them, they won't even go near the ranch. And the ones that do, they usually take offerings or animal skins and they put them on the fence post to ward off the demonic spirits and keep them at bay. That's their words. Brandon Fugel, in an interview that he did with Sean Ryan, actually said that. And that's the thing, is that they don't even like talking about these entities. And it's not just that, but it's Wendigo. Any of these entities that you can name off, they do not like them being mentioned, because like they said, if you talk about them, it's invoking them and they will come looking for you. So this sounds more demonic than anything. Even Jacques Vallée and a lot of these researchers, especially like Nigel Kerner and all these other ufologists out there that really study this, they all akin the whole alien thing, that it's more demonic than it is something coming from another galaxy or another world.
The Bible, what if it's connected?
Do you think it's connected?
Yeah, it's all absolutely connected. In fact, did you know that Kenneth Arnold and Jack Parsons were flying buddies? And Robert Goddard, who was another rocket engineer that was early pioneer in the rocket engineering, lived in Roswell, and he also knew both of these individuals. So you got that. So it's like you have the Kenneth Arnold sighting, and less than 2 weeks later you have the Roswell crash, and that these individuals all knew one another. The U.S. Air Force started investigating Jack Parsons because of when he worked for Howard Hughes, and he had taken classified documents out of the facility without permission. And so once they started investigating him, that's what led them into learning that him, L. Ron Hubbard, were understudies of Aleister Crowley, and that they had been doing this ritual called the Babylon Working between the years 1945 and 1946, and that supposedly they were successful in 1946. I believe that they actually did exactly what they set out to do, to bring about Babylon, the Whore of Babylon, and the Son of Perdition end times. In fact, it was Charles Race Tussle, who was the creator of Jehovah's Witnesses, who said that the end of the world would begin on October 14th, 1912? And that was the same day that Jack Parsons was born.
Okay, that's freaky.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's freaky, right?
What are the odds of that? Well, not just the rituals that they were performing out there at his mansion that he lived at, but also whenever they would go out and they would do these rocket launches, he was performing rituals to the Greek god Pan and doing all sorts of things. So, I mean, this stuff, it gets really dark and really deep really quickly. In fact, the place that they would go out there and do these rocket tests was called Devil's Gate Dam. In fact, him and his Suicide Squad, another interesting term right there. And come to find out, the same Robert Goddard that we were talking about a while ago, that's where he did all his rocket experiments. It's the exact same location, Devil's Gate Dam. So, like I said, you're seeing coincidence after coincidence and just over and over overlap. It's all completely connected. In fact, looking into the hitchhiker effect, which is part of Skinwalker Ranch, that led me into the remote viewers. I found out, I thought they were the early pioneers of the hitchhiker effect, because Uri Geller, one of the researchers, was part of SRI and the early remote viewing program. When they were researching him and looking into his powers, all the scientists that were assigned to researching him started having the hitchhiker effect in their homes and their families. The branch of the CIA called MK Offen, and this branch, that was their thing, was that they got into the occult and esoteric, pretty much kind of like the Ahnenerbe was the Nazis version. You know, they had several things like the Thule Society and Vril, but it was the Anunnurbe who was really steeped in the occult as well as the Vril. But yeah, MK often, I mean, they would infiltrate seances. They would send members into seances. They actually openly talked with witches, active witches. In fact, one of the most well-known witches, this well-known witch was Sybil Leek. This lady, she was so well known that H.G. Wells, Lawrence of Arabia, and Aleister Crowley all used to visit her back when she was 9 years old. Her family was that connected. In fact, when M.K. often was dealing with her and approaching her, she would tell them where the most active covens were, all the different locations of witches and covens all around the world. I mean, you know that also, what was it, Crowley and several of his colleagues, they all worked with British intelligence. So that's another thing, is like a lot of these people that are steeped in the occult and witchcraft and things like that, and demonic and satanic rituals, also have a lot to do with spies and spy agencies, different governments, intelligence agencies. I mean, there was a lady at the beginning of the film that you hear her talking about that she witnessed satanic rituals going on out at military bases. And she said that a lot of the people that are mixed up in the naval intelligence, not all of them, but a lot of them, are mixed up with the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis.
There was programming. They use military bases because they won't have any interference when they have someone on a military base. And a lot of my programming took place on military bases. I would like to talk about the fact that there are rituals done at the military bases also, and that rituals are not a cover. The people that do the mind control are involved, and rituals are very much a part of how they do things. For example, naval intelligence members or people that are in naval intelligence are usually very involved with Ordo Templi Orientis. And that doesn't mean that everyone in naval intelligence is involved in that. But naval intelligence is responsible for a lot of overseeing of ritual activity in this country. And they are responsible for a lot of this going on. There are other organizations, other agencies involved, but naval intelligence is very involved.
Well, not just that, but I don't know if you've read the book about Laurel Canyon. Have you read any of that stuff and looked into it? Oh man, yeah, the whole hippie movement. And I touched a little bit on this because people like Timothy Leary, who was big on promoting LSD and things like that, this was all part of the CIA and their MK Ultra, as well as MK Often and all that. In fact, this goes all the way back to Edgewood Arsenal. And they needed a giant pool of test subjects. So they were using the American public as guinea pigs so that they could see about tapping into powers, opening doors. And these kids thought that they were just doing this and that they were just tripping on acid and that they were having this experience, but they were opening doors to the demonic.
Everything they've experienced has been a manifestation of the demonic.
It's something demonic.
About dark forces and demonic attacks.
So it's just, you gotta ask, what's going on?
What do you think's going on?
I think that they've been dealing with they've been initiating satanic rituals at all levels of government because they are trying to tap into these things. They want to make contact. It's no different than John Dee back when he was the person that worked for Queen Elizabeth. He was doing the exact same thing. He was tapping into the demonic and to get power, technology. And a lot of the things, that's the thing, is that these rituals also, they're able to control humanity through what, most people think of as like MK Often, MK Ultra, things like this, where it's, like mind brainwashing, things like that. But it's actually occult rituals. And it's not just the United States government, it's multiple governments. In fact, at the end of the film, or towards the end of the film, I have the footage where it shows the explosion of UFOs that takes place from 1947 leading up to 2012. And when you get done watching that, you see that the United States, as well as Australia and England or Europe, we're the most brightly lit places on the entire planet.
Like something out of Lovecraft or Poe.
I find it fascinating.
Lovecraft fan, huh?
And I suppose he was a friend of H.P. Lovecraft and you're pulling Cthulhu rank on me.
H.P. Lovecraft and Aleister Crowley both, around the same time, encountered an entity. Crowley said that it referred to itself as Cthulhu, and it was H.P. Lovecraft who said it revealed itself to him as Cthulhu. But there was Kenneth Grant, who was the secretary of Thelema, who took over Thelema and OTO after Crowley died, and he wrote a 9-book series called the Typhonian series. And in the one book, he came out and said that Crowley misunderstood. He said that he had encountered the exact same entity that H.P. Lovecraft did. He just misunderstood, and that they were the same entity, and that it was actually Cthulhu. And Lovecraft, even Kenneth Grant, in his book Aleister Crowley and the Hidden God, he said that Lovecraft was dealing with things that he didn't fully understand. He had tapped into something, but he wasn't doing it through occult rituals. In fact, his father, I believed, was stricken with, I think his father actually went insane, if I remember correctly. And that, I don't know if these are generational curses or what, but I think at the same time Lovecraft was tapping into things that invoked a lot of this stuff. And what he was writing about, these old ones, he was just talking about fallen angels and Nephilim spirits. And so that was the reason that Kenneth Grant came out and said that he had been snuffed out, because he was tapping into things but wasn't giving them the full credit that they deserved. And so that's why they took him out. We talked about Crowley, that he had invoked the first entity, Aiwass, and he never saw Aiwass. He just dictated the Book of the Law. But in the Book of the Law, it actually stated that or actually it was Aleister Crowley was convinced that the Book of the Law was going to bring about the Son of Perdition, and eventually the end times was another thing. In fact, after it was released, when it first came out, World War I broke out quickly, not too long after. And then he decided to re-release the book right before World War II broke out. And once he re-released it, and then World War II broke out, he was convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that it played some sort of a role in bringing about the end times and the Son of Perdition. In fact, he referred to this by invoking something, these world wars, so that there would be mass blood sacrifice, and what he called baptism of blood for the Son of Perdition. Those aren't my words, that's Kenneth Grant's words. Well, Crowley never referred to them as alien or anything like. In fact, he didn't even refer to them as angels or demons. He just referred to them as Enochian entities, which is what John Dee used to refer to these individuals or these entities as. But yeah, when you look at the drawing that he did of Lamb, it totally looks like a gray alien. In fact, Stephen Greer, who does the CE5 research, so he does this. One of the things that they did out there in the desert where they were doing the CE5, a alien appeared flying over the group of people that was out there, and when you look at that photograph and put it right beside the drawing of Lamb, they're identical, completely identical. And that's the thing, is that, you know, most people think that this has to do with some sort of an alien hybrid program. It has nothing to do with that. They may be doing some of this stuff as far as like hybridization, but that's not what this is about. In fact, Nigel Kerner, one of the leading ufologists, he came out and said that him and John Mack, and who else was it? Whitley Strieber. They all three say that this has something to do with the human soul. They are trying to somehow implant themselves into the human soul. So you got to ask yourself, why are they so fascinated with the human soul?
Sometimes something so bad happens that a terrible sadness is carried with it, and the soul can't rest.
I believe that this is all antediluvian. The whole, nothing new under the sun. People think of things like Star Trek and Star Wars. It's like they think they're looking to the future, but you're actually looking into the past. Whatever you could think of, it's already been done. And the whole thing about these craft, Bob Lazar was talking about the 9 craft for a long time. He's actually taken people like John Lear and Phil Snyder and all them have gone out there with him. They've seen the craft flying around. In fact, he got arrested, and they threatened his life, and that's why he ended up leaving the program. And he went public about it because he thought that they were going to kill him. Bob Lazar had already came out and said that, one of the craft that they had found out there, and this was in the Joe Rogan podcast, but he told Joe Rogan that one of the craft that they had out there was actually found at an archaeological dig. So it wasn't just old, it was ancient. So when you think of things like Vimanas, and you hear stories about these craft that can fly from continent to continent, pole to pole, that Admiral Byrd was talking about, it's like, this is not anything new. Now David Rush, that's a little more current. He's the whistleblower that came out and was talking about all these black budget programs, and that they had all these crafts all around the country at different locations, different facilities that they were trying to back engineer, and that's where we get a lot of the technology from. I mean, right after 1947, the Roswell crashed, and all of a sudden we had cell phones. I mean, the cell phone came out in 1947. Most people don't even know that. The whole thing about the transistors and things like that, all this stuff was coming out right around 1947. 1947 was a pivotal year because of everything they were doing with the Babylon working ritual, plus the Mount Rainier sighting, and then the Roswell crash not even 2 weeks later. But look at all the other things that were happening in 1947. That Israel had already been agreed upon to become a state again, and that it was actually enacted in 1948, but yet it was agreed upon in 1947. Then you had the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found, and you just look at all the things that just kept happening in 1947. That was something was unlocked. Something was transpiring. I think that what they had actually set out to do about setting off and bringing about the end times and triggering it, I think they were successful. They've triggered a lot of events that will bring about the end of the world, that Jesus will come and return, and that God will pour out his wrath on the wicked and remove the wicked from the face of the earth. People are starting to wake up, and they're starting to realize it's like, whether it be alien abduction, sightings, encountering hitchhike effects, whether it be shadow people, or even sleep paralysis, whatever. If you call out in the name of Jesus, these things can be brought to an abrupt stop. But if you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you don't ever have to deal with it ever again. And even if we do see things coming upon the earth, like in Matthew where it says men's hearts failing them for fear for looking at these things coming up on the earth, if you're truly covered under the blood of Jesus Christ, I don't think they could touch us. I don't think we have anything to worry about. Now, will we see things that might look scary? Yes. But they won't be able to mess with us.